Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today we're here with Khemarey Khoeun, who is a Skokie Park District Commissioner and also the president of the National Cambodian Heritage Museum and Killing Fields Memorial in Chicago. And Khem and I are going to talk about what she does here, what her experience has been like in being an immigrant in America. And later on, we're going to be joined by Punisa Pov, who is the artist in residence here at the museum. And you just heard some of her music, traditional Cambodian music. So, Khem, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So you are quite involved in the community, and you have a unique background, but one shared by many who live in the area. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
My background is Cambodian American, and I came here as a child of refugees, and I think very common when you think about America being a land of immigrants, of people from different cultures, different countries who have immigrated here to America over the years, and what that history has looked like. I just happen to be a new American living here in America today.
Right. And you came here as a child, but your family you had told me previously that they had moved first to another country and then came to America later. And then you eventually settled in the Uptown area, right?
Correct. So everyone has their different stories of how they came to America. And for my family, I was actually born in the refugee camps in between the Cambodian and Thailand border. And I came here as an infant, and my family eventually settled in the Uptown neighborhood here in Chicago, which was a port of entry for many immigrants and refugees at the time. But then on my husband's side of the family, they actually were in the Philippines for a brief time, actually for a number of years before they actually were able to come to America and were sponsored here. So each of us have taken a different path to eventually be able to come and settle in the United States. And
how did you get to Skokie?
After meeting my husband and right before we got married, I grew up on the southwest side of Chicago in Cicero, and my husband grew up in the city. And when we got married, we were looking for a place that we felt was welcoming, and for us, diversity was important, but we wanted to make sure that we also were able to stay close to family because family is really important for us. So Skokie happened to be the place that our family settled in. But what was interesting was when my husband and I were looking for a house a number of years later, as our family grew, we checked out other places, and it was really hard to turn our backs to Skokie, and so we decided this was going to be our home.
Yeah. And Skokie, just has such a diverse community. So it's, a lot of people, I would assume, have a shared experience. So, how does that shape your life here, that experience of coming from elsewhere, being a refugee, and then being in a community as diverse and with that type of history?
One thing I've really appreciated over the years is I also used to be an organizer working for a large immigrant coalition, and have worked with many diverse communities all over the Chicagoland area, is that even though our histories and our stories are unique in terms of how we got here to America, at the very foundation of it is that people are looking for a better place to call home, right? And so that's something that we can all identify with. People want a better future for their children. They want to have a place that they can raise their family in. And those are all shared values that we can all come together on, and I think that's what brings people together.
Yeah. You've become very involved within your community, within the overall community. Why is that so important to you?
I think it's really good to have a foundation, right, in terms of how we anchor ourselves within the community, where it's not, I believe if you're not engaged, if you're not involved, then you could also lose your sense of self. And for me, it's important to know, not only for myself, my children has been my inspiration for everything. And I think about where they are going to be 10, 15 years from now. And I think about my community. And for what's important for me is for people to recognize that we're here and we're here to stay. And that, specifically for me, that the Cambodian community is here and we do exist and we're right here in your own backyard, and to help raise the visibility of the community so that people are educated and informed. The fact that people even know where Cambodia is on the map, right? I grew up at a time where when people would ask me where I'm from and I say Cambodia, they have no idea where the country even exists. So I think for me, being engaged gives me voice to be able to share who I am and my experiences. But at the same time, I hope it also creates an opening for other people to celebrate in their rich cultural history and heritage and what makes America so great.
Yeah. And I think that it's important. I've spoken with other people who are first generation immigrants to America, and there's a feeling of loss of sense of self because you're not in your homeland, you're in diaspora.
Correct.
There's a lot of talk about nationalism throughout the world right now. And I think that there's a difference between zealous nationalism and patriotism and pride of where you come from. You want to be connected to your past as well and be a part of the community. So I get that sense from you as well, right?
Yeah, but look, history is complicated, right?
Sure.
It's never easy and it's complex. And the other side of hope is fear. And you definitely have people in the community who, especially those from the elder generation, who have lived through their own sense of trauma and have had their obstacles that they've had to overcome before coming here to America. There is this fear of losing their culture, of losing their heritage, of their children growing up not knowing who they are. And so that's where you see some of the nationalism happen. And they're trying very hard to hang on to that past. But then you also have a younger generation that grew up here, that have lived most of our lives here and identify as being American, where we want to still hang on to that cultural heritage, but we also realize that our place is here in America, and how do we navigate and create a world for ourselves that is really ours, that represents who we are.
Right. And that's part of the reason for this museum, so people can understand where they come from. And I mean, we're sitting in a room here that has very, very graphic photos of the genocide that took place in Cambodia, and this is not a typical type of feeling I have when I'm doing one of these shows, and it's pretty awful what happened. And I think it's important that people don't forget what can happen and actually what continues to occur throughout the world.
Correct. So one of the things we do is education. And we also want to emphasize that our struggle is not ours alone, but there are many other communities out there who have also experienced atrocities as well, right? And I've been involved with the museum since early on, and one of the things that we were very thankful of and very appreciative of as well was the support that we got from the Jewish community, for instance, and their recognition and their understanding of what it was like to have experienced genocide, and also to learn from them in terms of what it took to still attempt to heal from it, and the fact that war, and in particular genocide, affects multiple generations. So it's not just a generation that have lived it and endured it and have witnessed it, but there's a legacy that's left behind for their children and their children after, right? And so that's part of the driving force behind my work, is making sure that my children and this next generation is able to be part of that healing process as well. And I really appreciate you, Aaron, for accepting the invitation to be here and to record here at the museum, because I wanted to be able to also allow Punisa, our artist in residence, to also participate in it, because she's such an integral part of our work and part of our cultural healing arts program that it would be incomplete without her.
Right. Well, it's a unique opportunity to have her on the show and to show the audience a slice of the Cambodian culture, and I think that's I'm happy that she's able to be a part of this episode. So the museum and the organization, when did it start?
So the history dates back to the Cambodian Association of Illinois, which we're also sitting in the space, was founded in 1970, around, I believe it was 76. That was the same year that the Khemarey genocide began. And so at that time, a number of Cambodians here in the Chicagoland area recognized a need to support those who were fleeing the country and making sure that those who were here as refugees that had the access to direct resources and needs that they required. But over time, as the community has evolved and changed, they recognize that it was more than providing direct services, but we also had to look at how we move forward as a community. And so the idea and the concept of hope and renewal and the Cambodian Museum was formulated around 2004, which is when we began our capital campaign. So the museum finally opened its door around 2014 and had its first exhibit, Our Journey Continues. So all of this is tied to that history, right? So the same people who were the founders of the Community Association were the ones who also helped found and build the museum as well. And since that time, there has been a transition where that leadership has been handed off to the next generation, my generation. And so I currently sit on the board as president of the National Cambodian Heritage Museum and Killing Fields Memorial, and it's the first of its kind in the United States to be established. And so we're very honored to be part of that process. Monday's the only day that we're closed, but we are open during the week for anyone who wants to stop by and take a look at the museum exhibit and get a personal tour. One of our staff members will provide you with that tour. And then on the weekends, there's usually bustling with activity. We've got classes and workshops going on throughout the day from older kids, younger kids, as well as the elder generation. So between language classes and music class and dance class, you name it, this place is busy on the weekends. So the museum is located in Albany Park. It's at 2831 West Lawrence Avenue.
Now, for some people, sorry to say this, but I think that some people don't know what happened in the genocide. Could you give, just a brief explanation of what happened, the history?
Sure. So, again, history is always complicated, right?
Sure.
And so trying to keep it as simple as possible. Cambodia was a neutral country during the Vietnam War. We were caught in between North and South Vietnam, and the king of Cambodia was trying to do his best in terms of maintaining neutrality within the war that was going on between Vietnam and the United States. There were a lot of superpowers that were involved, but what ultimately happened was it created an opportunity, a vacuum for Pol Pot, who was leader of the Khmer regime, to come in and to stoke fear and be able to build his guerrilla warfare in the forest. And eventually what happened was they took over the capital, Phnom Penh, by telling everybody that they had to run because the United States was going to come and bomb the capital. And that's how they took over the capital. And that marked the beginning of a terrible 4-year regime where people were targeted, they were killed. Any sort of Western influence was deemed an enemy, basically, of the state. And anyone who appeared to be intellectuals, if you were wearing glasses, if you were an artist, these folks were systematically killed. And so what they wanted to do was to go back to an agrarian society and go back to year zero. And so a lot of people were forced to work in labor camps families were separated, and people died of malnutrition. So we've lost about a quarter of the country's population within that short 4-year period. So between 1.7 to 2 million people.
Wow. It's pretty horrible.
It is, but the other thing I want to remind people is that as much as we want to educate people about that history, is that the Cambodian people and the Cambodian heritage are more than that, right? And we definitely don't want to be defined by that atrocity alone. Like, there is that history where we're all connected, but at the same time, all of us are moving forward, and we've been focusing on that, what that healing process looks like. And a lot of it has to do with reclaiming our history and our culture. And so that's why the work that Punisa does is so important, because through music, through song, through dance, we are bringing that back to our young people. We're connecting our elders with that history and making sure that the young generation have access to that as well. So for us, it's really important that we understand who we are, and who we are is much more than what happened in the past.
Right. And I think that that's key in being able to make people or get people involved and kind of recreate what was lost here in the United States, and kind of thrive on that culture that was basically stopped in its tracks for several years.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to highlight is that this is very timely, because every year Niles Township and the village of Skokie included puts together a series called Coming Together. And every year they focus on a particular culture or community to learn about, and so they deep dive into it. And last year was the Polish community, the year before was the Korean community. And so they've been doing this for over 20, 25 years. And what's different about this coming year in 2020 is the theme is focused on the journey to Niles Township, the journey to America, and wanting to highlight those stories of the diversity and the strength and of the immigrant communities here living in Niles Township. And so this is a really great opportunity to learn and to know who is right here in our community, who our neighbors are, and what rich stories they have to share with us as well. So there is an opening ceremony that takes place towards the end of January. I have to get back to you in terms of the location where they're hosting it this year.
And I'll put it in the show notes as well for people to be able to link to it.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of promotion around that. People are in the planning stages right now. There is going to be a grand opening ceremony. Last year we had 2,000 people walk through the doors and participate in it. So it's a great celebration. And this year we're going to have some performances. There's going to be people sharing their little tidbits about their journey here. But connected with that, it's part of a 3-month-long series. And so there's workshops, there's lectures, there's programs where both the schools and the library and the park district, the whole entire village is involved in this, right? And we're collaborating across different villages between Lincolnwood and Morton Grove and Skokie and Niles. Everyone's coming together to share in that story as well.
So, Khem, part of your involvement, besides being here at the museum, is also being a Park District Commissioner. How did you get involved in that?
So, funny story, I never thought about running for public office. I was like I said, I've been heavily involved in the community for some time, and the president of the Skokie Park District at the time, Jerry Clarito, he was the first Asian American elected to the Skokie Park Board. He was Filipino, and I had worked with him in previous capacities. And when he was looking to retire, he had actually reached out to me and invited me to run for the Park District position. So that was something that I had not ever considered before until he had invited me to consider it.
Yeah. And how has that experience been for, you talked to me about your daughter, said, you talked about the importance for her for seeing you do that.
Yeah, so when Jerry invited me. I was still on the fence because I had never considered running for public office. And so I took some time to think about it and talk to family and friends to get their feedback as well in terms of whether or not I was ready for it. During that time, this was right before the election of 2016. And after the election, I remember my daughter clinging to me very closely and crying every time I dropped her off at school. And it took me about a week to finally realize what was bothering her. She had spent the entire summer reading Barack Obama's biography and Hillary Clinton's biography. And I remember the night before, she told me, "Mommy, I want to go out to vote. I want to vote for Hillary." And I told her she was too young to vote, but to remember that when she's older, to make sure she does go out and exercise her right to vote. But it made me realize that I wanted her to know if she wasn't happy with a particular result, that she also has the ability to change and make an impact. And so in that time when I was still debating about whether or not to run for the Park District, after seeing the impact it had on my daughter, I realized that I wanted to make sure that she recognized that she has the power to change the world as well. And so that was when I decided to throw my hat in the ring and petition to go ahead and run for the Park District office. My kids have always been my inspiration. They're the ones have been pushing me to the edge as far as thinking about how do I want to be a mother and how do I want to lead, and how do I lead by example. And so that was a huge driving force for why I did decide to run for the Park District. And it's been a tremendous joy because that in the process has given me a vehicle to share my story and also to try to highlight the stories of other communities as well, in terms of making sure that they have representation at the table.
And you are the only female Cambodian American elected official in the United States, right?
Yes, and I did not plan for that. I didn't think about that until the night when I won the election. It finally hit me that not only was I the first Cambodian American elected in Illinois, but I am also the first Cambodian American woman elected in the country.
So you're really a leader.
But the thing I think about is that it was never something that I had planned to do, right? And I think no one, I think really, most people don't really think about that until they've been asked to step up. And in the spaces where I have stepped up as a leader, whether it's through the Park District or through the National Cambodian Heritage Museum, I've been asked to step up. And I think especially for women as well, we often always undermine ourselves and our worst enemy because we always think that we're not good enough or we're not smart enough, we're not strong enough. And ultimately, it takes the support of the community to really back you up as well, to create the space for me to step up, and I think for a lot of other people as well. So we want to make sure that we continue to support those people that have the potential to be leaders and maybe have not thought of it themselves, that we're creating those opportunities for them to step up as well and see themselves as leaders.
Give them the spark.
Exactly, yes.
What are some of the things that you're working on at the Park District right now that you want to share?
Well, this is a really important year. We're going through some transition right now. Our executive director is retiring at the end of this calendar year, and one of the primary responsibilities of a board director is to hire the executive director. So we're in the process of interviewing right now and making a decision as far as who the next leader is going to be in terms of managing the Park District. The other thing is we're also engaged in a 5-year strategic plan right now that we've created multiple opportunities to make sure that community members are engaged and we're getting their feedback in terms of what they envision and where they want to see the Park District going within the next couple of years.
That's great. And then some of the things that the Park District's been working on is like the Festival of Colors.
Correct. So that was a new initiative that was born out of one of our diversity committee meetings. And last year we piloted by having it integrated as part of the Festival Culture. So the Festival of Cultures is an annual event that the Park District puts together at the end of May, and it brings all the different communities together. We have lots of music, lots of dancing, lots of food, and somebody came up with the idea of celebrating Holi Day, which is a festival in India that's typically around, I'd say, March, but that tends to be too cold in Chicago.
Yeah.
So we tried doing it in May, and it was a really great success. But it was something that also the family can rally around and have fun with, right? There's just so much color, and you think about the color run that we have in Chicago. It's just throwing different colors of paint all over you. And kids get to have fun. They get messy, and what other way of doing than out in the park instead of at home, right?
Sure.
And so we had a huge success last year with the Festival of Cultures. And this year we did it as a standalone event. So it was the Festival of Colors, and we had that about a month ago, and that was also a huge success. We thought it was going to rain. We thought people weren't going to come out, and people came out in full force and loved it. So we hope to continue to see more of those activities where we are integrating different communities and their cultures into the broader community, right? Because that is the strength and the diversity of our community. And one of the things that we're also working on right now is the Day of the Dead festival. So there are two events that we have going on at the Park District, one that's dedicated towards adults and another that's more family-friendly towards kids. But the idea is to remember and celebrate those who had passed away, and that is integral as part of Mexican culture and Mexican celebrations, right?
Sure.
But what I think is also really important and interesting is that there are many cultures, and if you think about the fall and the changing of seasons, there are many cultures that also identify with that. Within the Cambodian community, we're also wrapping up a 15-day festival, which is called Pchum, and it's very similar to, it's funny because one of our board members actually was trying to figure out how to explain this to her two younger daughters, what Pchum is in the Cambodian culture, and she's like, it's like the Day of the Dead for Mexican culture. It's when we remember and honor our ancestors who have passed away. We have the photo that we pay homage to, and so you think of the movie Coco,
Sure.
That's exactly what it is. And that's what we use to explain to our children about what our holiday is, because it's very similar to Day of the Dead.
You know, I feel so silly to say this, but I think it's really important that we share cultures and people are well educated about what else is going on. But I saw the movie Coco, and then I was in Mexico a couple years ago, and I saw all these figurines that were basically like that you saw in the movie. And I didn't know about Day of the Dead, so I'm like, why is this movie such a big deal?
It's a
and I felt
very
so
big deal.
stupid.
Yeah.
But I think that it just speaks to like how important it is that we have these things so we can appreciate each of our cultures and understand each other. And by understanding each other, you break down fear.
Exactly.
And you come together as one community, which is, I think, what's so important.
You know, just one thing I want to add to that. The first step is understanding that history and being able to share that history or that culture, right? And then the second is to be able to identify the common threads. And when I was working around immigration issues, you know, there's a lot of conversation around what our current immigration policy is. And a lot of it's directed towards Mexicans and what's going on at the border, right? But when you start sharing the stories about how people come here to America, it's not just Mexicans who are here in this country. It's a plethora of communities and cultures who are here.
It's everybody.
And they come here for very similar reasons, which is the opportunity for a better life. And once you start to identify that common thread, communities are able to connect with one another and not be divided by fear, right? And they're able to understand why someone would put themselves in a position where they would make sacrifices to try to come to America, and what it is that they're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, I think, you know, my family was all from Eastern Europe. They came, thankfully, before World War II, but they were escaping, you know, Russian pogroms or Nazis or whatever it may be. One of my great-grandfathers went to South America first and then, came up here. It's a similar story to what's going on now. And yeah, people need to keep that in mind.
Yes, yes. It's different generations, different era, but the story is very much the same.
Very much so. Well, we definitely want to share more of the culture, and I think it'd be great if we bring Nisa on.
Okay, great. Well, I'll go ahead and invite her. Thanks.
Okay. So we have here Punisa Pov, and Punisa is the artist in residence here at the museum, and played some of the music that we heard at the beginning of the show, and we'll also hear some later as well. But thanks for coming here. And so if you could tell us a little bit about what is your role here at the museum?
So I started working with the museum in 2015 as a volunteer at first. And since I have a background learning music with the surviving master from Cambodia, I introduced the music class to the Cambodian American kids here to learn about their arts and culture and their roots, as well as to also promote and preserve Cambodian music. Since the Khemarey regime, we lost a lot of many artists that were very talented and all, and so we wanted to preserve and also healing, using the music for healing.
Sure.
Yeah. Even though it's just happened for 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days, but people still suffer from the trauma.
And you grew up there, so do you see? Have people, the younger generation, have people moved on from the trauma, or is it still something that very much holds the culture or in the memory?
So I was born and raised in Cambodia. People don't really see it about what we suffer, but every day I would hear, people talking about back then, how much they, suffered, and they would not want to suffer again. But, people been, living using sometimes violence, but without knowing that it's the effect from the genocide.
Right.
Yes.
So the music is the therapy in many ways.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And what was the instrument that you were playing?
The instrument I was playing is the Cambodian xylophone called Roniet Ai.
Okay. And how old of an instrument is that? When was that developed? Do you know?
It's almost 1,000 years.
Wow, so there's quite a bit of history there.
Yes.
So what was the song that you played at the beginning?
The songs I was playing is the Mahauri music that was founded in the era of Mahanaco era in the 13th century. And it's got popular during the Longwei era in the 16th century.
And what is it about? What is the meaning behind it?
So this kind of music, sounds very melodious, like a bird, and the kind of bird that we call nori, and people call it Mahauri music because there were women musician and singer. They sing very beautiful, yeah, and this type of music is usually described about the scenery, nature, romance, and people daily life. Yeah, and nowadays they use some of the Maori music for folk and classical ballet dance in Cambodia.
Okay. And what's the song that you're going to play at the end?
The song that I play in the end is called Niri Longwei. The title itself is translated as "Woman in the Longwei era" during the 16th century. Yes.
What is nowadays what's the type of popular music that's in Cambodia? What is it like living there?
So when I was 11, 12 years old, we never really heard of Cambodian classical and traditional music on TV or radio, so we were not familiar, until I got to be introduced to a music master, that she teaching us the Cambodian classical music. And until then, I often, introduced to my younger friends, and they don't really know about Cambodian classical music. They just think that music is for funeral and things like that. So it was not popular back then. And nowadays, there's a lot of influence from a different country to Cambodia, pop music and all. So young people, they are more into that. But nowadays, the people who are been learning and preserve the Cambodian traditional and classical music, they working hard on making a very professional performance, and I think it's getting better. So people getting to know more about Cambodian music. Like I said, the reason we focus more about it because the music was not written down.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
It's important to record it and keep
Yes.
that memory. And is Cambodia, now is it a pretty modern country? Is it developed? What is it like living there?
I've been living in Cambodia for 19 years.
Okay.
I would say it's a developing country.
Yeah.
People still living a simple life, and farming and in the city is now more developed with the more investment from other country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you like being here in Chicago?
I do like here a lot with the people I know, and especially working in the museum.
Sure.
And it is for Cambodian community, which I really happy to be here.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. So if people come here to the museum, I came here, I got a tour, you gave me the tour, so people can come meet you. But there's lots of programming here that, you do where people can come, and if they want to get involved and learn about Cambodian culture, this is really the place to do it in Chicago, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. It's been a real pleasure having you both on the show. And, thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to this latest episode of Inside the Skev. I hope you enjoyed it. Just remember to subscribe. And if you need any assistance for your real estate needs in the Chicagoland area, or specifically Skokie, Evanston, or Skevinston, feel free to reach out to me. I am a realtor at Dreamtown Realty in Evanston. You can email me at aaron@skevinston.com or go to my website, aaronmasliansky.com. Thanks so much for listening.